All right, welcome back. At this time, we're going to be talking about Unit 9 and agency, and we're going to talk about the relationship that is created between the agency and the agent and the client and all the responsibilities and your legal and ethical requirements. We're going to talk about some of the concepts and terminologies that we've been using or going to use. We're going to talk about the main two different types of agency called express and implied. And then there's some other different types of agencies you talk about. We're also going to talk today about your fiduciary, that's a funny word, fiduciary duties that you will inherit when you create agency. All right? Any questions on that? Cool. So let's get started. Agency, or the history of agency. First of all, there's three types of laws that we want to talk about. There's common law. Common law is born out of decisions and judgments, traditions, and can often change, right? Like a judge, small claims court judge says, hey, that's blue. No, that's blue. All right? Then we have statutory law, which is codified. Like criminal code would be statutory law. You do this, this is what happens. Then we have administrative law, which is what we will deal with through our real estate commission. And when we get to the laws section, we will go through all the administrative law that are specifically written for how to administer the real estate license. What we are going to talk about today is the law of agency. And occasionally you will hear it called the common law of agency because it does change. We had a huge major change in the 80s. Buyer's agents, there was no such thing as a buyer's agent. Okay, they didn't come along till the late 70s, early 80s. Up until then, the seller had a listing agent, and if they could cheat or lie or steal their way into getting the buyer to buy, the buyer used to work under the term caveat emptor. Have you guys ever heard of that? Buyer beware. It was up to the buyer to find out if something was going bad. So we had that change in the late 70s, early 80s. Buyers, then we started having agents work for buyers. Then we had this thing called sub-agency. It's gone away. We don't even talk about that anymore. So the reason it changes, or because it changes, is exactly why you guys now have continuing ed every couple years. Actually, it's every year. So that if agency changes, you can be made aware of the changes. One of the most common ones, or the newest ones, the Minimum Level of Services Act we talked about the other day. When I first started as an agent, we did not have to go to closing. All right? That has recently changed in the last 15 years or 20. Now we go to closing, and we'll talk about why and how that comes about. Okay? So we're going to talk about the law of agency, and often you're going to hear it called the common law of agency. Now, once again, we're going to get into all of these fancy words and terms and things. So let's go through it one more time. First word I want to talk about is an agent. Remember, an agent is somebody that's hired to represent somebody else. Talent agent, sports agent, modeling agent, all right? They are connected to or create a relationship with this person called a client. This person called a client. The relationship between these two is agency, and that's what we are going to discuss today. Feels like I just had this conversation with you guys. Have we gone over this? This is one of those deja vu moments for me because it feels like I just had this. Am I crazy? No, we haven't? Wow. Okay. Are you sure? because this feels like I just talked about it like 5 minutes ago to me. You ever had that deja vu thing? I mean, I got it really going on right now that it feels like we just, maybe that's when they reset. You ever seen those movies where they go back in time and they change the timeline? Maybe they did that, and I've got a remnant from the first one, because I seem to remember, I don't know. The client can also be called the principal. So my client is called a principal. Or he can be called the seller. Or, of course, the buyer, depending on what side you are on. So the person with whom you are working is called your client, the principal, or the seller. You can use any of those terms you want, all right? Those all mean the same thing. The one person that we want to talk about is this person called a customer. A customer is someone with whom you have no agency with. And because you don't have agency, you have a whole separate set of obligations to them. All right? So the whole name of this game, this is a very easy job. All you have to do is find a customer and turn them into a client. That's it. Now, how you do that, that's for you to decide. Some people do radio shows like I did. Some people have billboards. Some people put banners up at racetracks. Some people buy grocery cart things. Whatever your deal is, all you are trying to do is take a customer and turn them into a client by becoming their agent, either on the selling side or the buying side. All right? It's not a hard gig. Now, here's the thing that's important to understand. As a client, they have separate obligations. You have a set of fiduciary obligations to your client. We are going to go through those obligations here in just a minute. There are 6 of them. All right? So because I owe these obligations to my client, and we're going to talk about the care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. We'll get to them. The customer, I also have, but I don't owe the same amount of respect or allegiance and loyalty to a customer. All I owe to a customer is I can't lie to him, and I don't help him out. All right? So watch this. As I am sitting on my side of the table, I just left a closing with one of my agents. We sat on our side of the table. That was our client that we sat with because we had an agency agreement with her. On the other side of the table was an FC Tucker agent sitting with her client. But her client is my customer. Everybody see that? I have agency with my client on my side of the table. She has agency with her client on her side of the table. But the person sitting across from me is my customer. I can't lie to them. I don't help them. All right? I still got to be honest and fair with them, but I don't help them. She helps them. She doesn't help my client. I help my client. Everybody get what I'm saying? So on 90% of all your deals, you're going to sit on one side of the table, and you are going to be a client to one person and a customer to the other. Because the other agent sitting on the other side is a client to that person and is a customer to you. Now, there's another one out there. There's one called a non-agent. That's a RE/MAX person. No, I'm kidding. I got that on recording too. A non-agent is when you have no agency with either the buyer or the seller. This will happen very, very infrequently. I think I've done it 3 times in my career. So basically, watch this. What you have got is I have got 2 customers. The one calls himself a seller and the other calls himself a buyer. All I'm hired to do, and a lot of times you may hear this called a facilitator or a transaction coordinator, but they're going to go, hey, Raymond, this was a for sale by owner. I don't need you to broker. I found the buyer. I don't know where to sign that form at. Will you help me sign the forms or show me how to sign the forms? Yes. So what I'm going to do is put blinders on and realize that I have no clients on either side of here. And I'll say, okay, you got to sign here, and you got to sign here, and you got to sign here. And they go, oh, thank you. And then the buyer says, do you think I could have got a better deal? I don't know. I can't help you because you're not my client. And if I do help you and make you my client, I now want paid a commission. All right? So think of a transactional agent or a non-agent as having 2 customers. Most of your deals, you got a client on one side, customer on the other. In a transactional, you have 2 customers. Neither one of them do I represent. And you have them sign this form. That way, when this deal blows out of the water and they end up going to court, you don't want them pointing at Raymond and going, well, my agent told me to sign this. No, 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 Your Honor, time out. I was not their agent. Here's the form that says I treated them like customers, which means I had no agency with them. They're on their own. Yes? So why would you even help them? Because you get paid. Oh, you still get paid. You can still get paid, but typically you get paid on this a flat fee, $500, $1,000. You pay me $500, I'll go over this form with you. Yep. And I'll show you where to sign. But you can't help them. So like I said, if they go, oh, do you think I could have got a better deal? Well, I don't know. I can't really help you. I can't give you advice. I can't give you insight. I can't give you expertise. Because if I do, I create agency. And that implies that now I have responsibility and all kinds of issues. So do you get paid on customers too? Well, they both got together and paid me. All right? So like the seller said, I'll pay you $1,000 if you do this. And it was just a cost of him to sign the papers. I've only done it 2 or 3 times in 19 years. Very infrequently. Because typically what's going to happen is a for sale by owner says, oh, I need help with the paperwork. Who do you think the first person they're going to call is? An attorney. They usually call an attorney. Let me get my attorney to help. They don't even think about us because they always think about us as being, oh, a broker and I got to pay a commission. So very seldom will you ever do it. I've only done it 2 or 3. Who? Oh, the attorney would know how to do the paperwork because they're probably a real estate attorney. All right, so they would know